Shalom Aleichem, peace be upon you, and welcome back to the broadcast. I'm Shawn. Today we are looking at this week's Torah Parsha, which is called Vayera, which means, and he appeared. Let me give you the portion summary real quick from TorahPortions.org. It says the fourth reading from the book of Genesis is named Vayera. It means, and he appeared, because the very first story describes how the Lord appeared to Abraham one day as he sat outside his tent. And Vayera continues with this series of tests of faith for Abraham, including in one great final trial. So this morning the portion includes Genesis chapter 18 through Genesis chapter 22. A quick outline: we have a son promised to Abraham and Sarah. We have judgment pronounced on Sodom, the depravity of Sodom, Sodom and Gomorrah destroyed. We have the shameful origin of Moab and Ammon. We have Sarah and Abraham at Gerar. We have the birth of Isaac. We have Hagar and Ishmael sent away. We have Abraham and Abimelech make a covenant. We have the command from God to sacrifice Isaac, and then the genealogy of the children of Nahor. So there is a lot in this portion this morning. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to give commentary and details on all of it. Most of my commentary will come in the first part here. Starting with the first three verses, because I'm going to, let's just get to it. Let me read the first three verses, and then I'll kind of give you the commentary I wanted to give on that, and then we'll continue on with the story, which quickly gets to the Sodom and Gomorrah story here in the book of Genesis. All right. I am reading from the Hallelujah Scriptures, but with reluctancy this morning, and I'll explain that here in about 30 seconds. Let's have a look. Genesis chapter 18. Let's begin. And Jehovah appeared to him by the terebinth trees of Mamre, while he was sitting at the tent door in the heat of the day. So he lifted up his eyes, and he looked, and he saw three men standing opposite him. And when he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them, and bowed himself to the ground, and said, Jehovah, if I have now found favor in your eyes, please do not pass your servant by. So please note, two things I want to point out. The first is just a theological concept here. I believe that one of these three men is God that Abraham sees. And as this little story progresses, I think it becomes more and more obvious. First of all, first verse says, and Jehovah appeared to him by the terebinth trees of Mamre. Not only that, here in a minute when it's disclosed that Sodom and Gomorrah is going to be judged, the two angels proceed, two of the men, which we know are angels, proceed into the city while Abraham has this back and forth with the third man and begs him to not destroy the city if there's, 50 people there, and if there's 40, and, he gets it down to, I believe, 10. And so I believe it is God appearing in man as a man. And there's a theological concept known as a Christophany. It very well could be that scenario as well. But I believe we're dealing with God and two angels appearing as men. And Abraham certainly is under that impression. And the scriptures tell us that Jehovah appeared to him by the terebinth trees. The thing I want to point out about the Hallelujah Scriptures, and this is a problem with pretty much all of the sacred name Bibles, and let me just point it out. And you find a sacred name Bible, and I'll find you where they do this at some point. In verse 3, so you have Jehovah appeared to him by the terebinth trees, which is important because that helps us kind of determine the conversation we just had, right? Being able to see God's name. The problem is in verse 3, and said, Jehovah, I have now found favor in your eyes. Please do not pass by your servant. It actually doesn't have God's name, Jehovah, there in the Hebrew. In that scenario, it's actually Adonai. So what it should be translated as, and what it is translated as in the King James Bible and any other English translation, is O Lord, or the Lord. And I said, O Lord, O Adonai, if I have found favor in your eyes, please do not pass your servant by. Should not say Jehovah in that instance. The reason why that's a big deal is because while we can say just how grievous it is to have the Lord's name replaced in all these English translations with capital Lord, or if you have a Jewish Kamash, it'll just say Hashem, it's equally as grievous to put God's name where it is not, in my opinion. And so what almost all of these Sacred Name Bibles most certainly do is they just use a find and replace program, and they just find everywhere where the name Lord is in the Old Testament, they replace it with Jehovah. And that is not always the case. Sometimes God's name is framed differently. Sometimes it's actually Lord because it's Adonai. And if you're not going to take the time to do that correctly, then you shouldn't be doing it at all. And so this is one of several places where this happens. And it's not just Hallelujah Scriptures. Like I said, it's just about any of these Sacred Name Bibles. Anyway, there's my rant for this morning. Let's get to the actual text. Verse 4. Or let's start with verse 3 again. So Abraham says, O Lord, if I have now found favor in your eyes, please do not pass by your servant. Please let a little water be brought, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. And let me bring a piece of bread and refresh your hearts, and then go on, for this is why you have come to your servant. And they said, Do as you have said. So Abraham ran into the tent to Sarah, and he said, Hurry, make ready 3 cm of fine flour, knead it, and make cakes. And Abraham ran to the herd and took a tender and good calf and gave it to a young man, and he hurried to prepare it. And he took curds and milk and the calf which he had prepared, and he put it before them. And he stood by them under the tree as they ate. And they said to him, Where is Sarah your wife? And he said, See, in the tent. And he said, I shall certainly return to you according to the time of life. And see, Sarah your wife is to have a son. And Sarah was listening in the tent door, which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, well advanced in age, and Sarah was passed away of women. And Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I have grown old, shall I have pleasure, my master being old too? And Jehovah said to Abraham, Why did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I truly have a child since I am old? Is any matter too hard for Jehovah? At the appointed time, I am going to return to you according to the time of life, and Sarah is to have a son. But Sarah denied it, saying, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. And he said, No, but you did laugh. And the men rose up from there and looked toward Sodom. And Abraham went with them to send them away. And Jehovah said, Shall I hide from Abraham what I am doing? Since Abraham is certainly going to become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I have known him, so that he commands his children and his household after him to guard the way of Jehovah, to do righteousness and right ruling, so that Jehovah brings to Abraham what he has spoken to him. And Jehovah said, Because the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very heavy, I'm going down now to see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry against it that has come to me. And if not, I know. So the men turned away from there and went toward Sodom. But Abraham still stood before Jehovah. All right. So we have the sit down. God tells Abraham, hey, in the time of life, so I would assume he's talking about 9 months from now, Sarah's going to have a son. Sarah's kind of laughing within herself, because it seems just absurd. And then they get up and they're walking away, and Abraham's sitting on the way, and Jehovah's like, should I tell Abraham what we're about to do? And of course, it says that the two men go down towards Sodom, but Abraham stood before Jehovah. Just another example of why I think we're dealing with God in human form. Verse 23, and Abraham drew near and said, would you also destroy the righteous with the wicked? Now remember, Abraham is thinking about most definitely Lot, right, his nephew. You're going to destroy the righteous with the wicked? Would the God of the universe not do the right thing? Like, I love this about Abraham, and his logic makes perfect sense to me, right? Like, would the God of the universe destroy the righteous alongside the wicked? That's the question. Verse 24, and he says, suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Would you also destroy the place and not spare it for the 50 righteous that were in it? Far be it from you to act in this way, to slay the righteous with the wicked, so that the righteous should be as the wicked. Far be it from you. Does the judge of all the earth not do right? I love this. I love that there's just this righteous spirit within Abraham, that even standing before God, he's making this claim. It's gutsy, I'll say that. And Jehovah said, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I shall spare all the place for their sakes. And Abraham answered and said, look, please, I who am but dust. See, notice that Abraham's not being disrespectful. And every time here, he's reminding God, hey, I'm nothing, right? You're the king, you're the God of the universe. I'm nothing but. So Abraham answered and he said, look, please, I who am dust and ashes have taken it upon myself to speak to Jehovah. Suppose there are 5 less than 50 righteous. Would you destroy all of the city for the lack of 5? And he said, if I find 45, I will not destroy it. And he spoke to him yet again. He said, suppose there are found 40. And he said, I would not do it for the sake of 40. And he said, let not Jehovah be displeased, and let me speak. Suppose there are found 30. He said, I would not do it if I find 30 there. And he said, look, please, I have taken it upon myself to speak to Jehovah. Suppose there are found 20. And he said, I would not destroy it for the sake of 20. And he said, let not Jehovah be displeased, and let me speak only this time. Suppose there are found 10. And he said, I would not destroy it for the sake of 10. And then Jehovah went away as soon as he had ended speaking to Abraham. And Abraham returned to his place. So there's the first chapter, chapter 18. And some may make the argument, well, why did Abraham stop at 10? Well, he's probably thinking there's at least 10 there. I mean, he's probably thinking my nephew's got some daughters and some sons-in-laws, and, surely, just amongst them, surely, maybe there's 10, right? That's a reasonable thought. Continuing on, verse 19. And the 2 messengers, now they're being referred to as the angels, right, in the text. And the 2 messengers came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting at the gate of Sodom. And when Lot saw them, he rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. So notice Lot has the same response when he sees these 2 men. He knows. Something in their spirit just knows. This is exactly what happened. Abraham saw the men, and he bowed himself to the ground. Lot sees them, and he bows himself to the ground, and he said, look, please, my masters, please turn into your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet and rise early and go your way. So notice, it's the same hospitality. Oh, people, messengers of God are here. I'm going to show some reverence, some hospitality. Now listen to their next statement, because this is not by accident. This is Lot's first test right out of the gate. And they said, no, but let us spend the night in the open square. Now I would argue, please note that this is not by accident. This is the first test for Lot, because they know, which is why they're there to destroy the city, they know what Lot knows, that after night nothing good is happening in Sodom, in the public square. I have a study up on the YouTube channel about the story of Sodom according to the ancient text known as Jasher. And maybe I'll do a rebroadcast of that, just like I did this past week of another story. Because it wasn't just the sexual immorality, while that was grievous, but no different than our time. But what was a little bit different is how they would treat the stranger and some of the terrible, evil crimes they would commit to people that came into their cities, especially after night. So Lot knows this. The angels know this too, and they're saying, no, we're going to just stay in the public square. Lot's not having it. Verse 3, but he urged them strongly, and they turned into him, and he came into the house, and he made them a feast, and he baked them unleavened bread, and they ate. Before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both old and young, and all the people from every part surrounded the house. And they called to Lot and said to him, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may know them. So Lot went out to them through the doorway, and he shut the door behind them. And he said, please, my brothers, do not this evil. So please note, when they say, let us know them, Lot knows what they mean. And all of us know what they mean. And so he's urging them, please don't do this evil thing. Look, please, I have 2 daughters who have not known a man. Please let me bring them out to you, and you do to them what is good in your eyes. Only do no deed to these men, because they have come under the shadow of my roof. Now listen, I realize we're dealing with different time, and I realize that in this culture, the hospitality is high priority, and I understand that we have 2 angels from heaven here, but I have never been able to wrap my mind around this. Whether I'm right or wrong for feeling this way, it is how I feel. I'm always appalled by this, that this would be Lot's response. And again, this isn't on God, this is Lot's response. I have 2 virgin daughters. I'll send them out to you. This ravenous crowd. I just cannot believe it. But that is what he does, or what he offers. But they said, stand back. They said, this one came into sojourn, and should he always judge? Now we are going to treat you worse than them. I mean, these people are disgustingly wicked. So they pressed hard against the man Lot and came near to break down the door, but the men reached out their hands and pulled Lot into the house with them and shut the door, and they struck the men who were in the doorway of the house with blindness, both small and great, and they wearied themselves to find the door. And the men said to Lot, have you anyone else here? And a son-in-law and your sons and your daughters and whoever you have in the city, please bring them out of this place. For we are going to destroy this place, because the cry against them has grown great before the face of Jehovah, and Jehovah has sent us to destroy it. And Lot went out and he spoke with his sons-in-law who had married his daughters, and he said, get up, get out of this place, for Jehovah is going to destroy this city. But to his sons-in-law he seemed as one joking. Please note, this is a great tragedy. I believe I covered the parables in our study in the book of Revelation last week. The men go out to the highways and they urge the people to come in, for the marriage supper is ready. And it says that they took it lightly. I've been warning for over a decade for people to start walking in righteousness and holiness and start taking their relationship with the Lord seriously, and that the time is short. And some people would say it's been 10 years. Well, that's not very long. Noah preached for 100 years before the flood came. And I got to tell you, a majority of the people take it lightly. They just think you're a quack. They cannot see the world on fire around them, and the world crumbling around them, and sin reaching heights not seen since the days of Sodom and Gomorrah, since the days pre-flood. And this is a great tragedy for Lot. He's got daughters who are married. He doesn't just have the 2 virgin daughters. He has daughters who've been married. The sons-in-law mock it. Verse 15, and when morning dawned, the messengers urged Lot to hurry, saying, so it's been a full night. Lot's been trying. But now the time has come. Get up, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be consumed in the punishment of the city. This is important. Jesus talks about this, and I believe he was talking about 70 AD, and I believe he was talking about the future end of all things. He says it'll be like the days of Lot and Noah. But then he talks about how Noah was preserved in the boat, and Lot was brought out of the city. We have come out of her, my people, lest you partake in her sins. There's just, but both of these scenarios are supernatural. Obviously, this issue with Lot is supernatural. Him and his daughters are about to be rescued, pulled by the hand out of Sodom. They eventually have to basically drag them out. And while he lingered, the men took hold of his hand and his wife's hands and the hands of his 2 daughters, Jehovah having compassion on him. How gracious is God here. Lot's refusing to leave, and we know why, right? He's trying to get his sons-in-law to take him seriously. Eventually the angels just grab him, say, now it's time to go. And they brought him out. The angels brought Lot and his wife and his daughters out and put them outside the city. And it came to be when they had brought them outside that he said, escape for your life. Do not look behind you, nor stray anywhere in the plain. Escape to the mountains, lest you be consumed. What was about to happen was so powerful, this judgment, that you couldn't even set your eyes upon it without being consumed. They're being warned, don't look. And Lot said to them, oh no, Jehovah, look, please, your servant has found favor in your eyes, and you have increased with kindness, which you have shown to me by saving my life, but I am unable to escape to the mountains, lest calamity overtake me and I die. Look, please, this city is near enough to flee to, and it is small. Please let me escape there. Is it not a small matter? And let my life be saved. And he said to them, look, I have found favor in you concerning this matter, without overthrowing the city for which you have spoken hurt. And they said, hurry, escape there, for I am not able to do any deed until you arrive there. So the name of the city was called Seor. The sun had risen upon the earth when Lot entered Seor. And Jehovah rained sulfur and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah from Jehovah out of the Shemayim. So he overthrew those cities and all the plain and all the inhabitants of the cities and what grew on the ground. But his wife looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. I'm just going to bring this up quickly because we don't have a whole lot, much more time. But Jesus only tells us to remember one woman. You know who that is? Go to Luke chapter 17, starting with verse 32. Remember Lot's wife. Whoever shall seek to save his life shall lose it, and whosoever shall lose his life shall preserve it. When he's talking about these end times, remember Lot's wife. Don't look back, longing for what was. And we can empathize with her, right? She had daughters still there, her sons-in-law. They refused to come. It's a hard thing. And the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah is for our example according to the apostles. It's an example to those what would happen if you live in this ungodly manner. That's one of the reasons that the Western world should be in absolute trembling with fear. Because in many ways we are as bad, if not worse, than Sodom and Gomorrah as a society. And I ask you, is God a liar when he warns about these things? All right, let's continue on. Verse 27, and Abraham rose early in the morning to the place where he had stood before Jehovah. And he looked toward Sodom and Gomorrah and toward all the land of the plain, and he looked and he saw the smoke of the land, which went up like the smoke of a furnace. Thus it came to be, when Elohim destroyed the cities of the plain, that Elohim remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, when he overthrew the cities in which Lot had dwelt. Please note real quickly, why was Lot rescued? For the sake of Abraham. It says that Elohim remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the city. And Lot went up to Zoar, and he dwelt in the mountains, and his 2 daughters were with him. For he was afraid to dwell in Zoar, and he and his 2 daughters dwelt in a cave. And the firstborn said to the younger, Our father is old, and there is no man on earth to come into us, as in the way of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine and lie with him, so that we preserve the seed of our father. Now, before you get all judgy about this admittedly wrong response, it's very possible that in the eyes of the girls, that everything is gone. They just watched fire rain down and destroy everything they've known. They were born and raised in Sodom. They think the world is ending. Very, very likely that's the case. And so while this act may be grotesque and wrong, try to imagine what it's like to see the world burn before your very eyes. Everyone you know, your own mother, turned to salt. And then ask yourself, are you going to be necessarily in the right state of mind? Not saying that it's I'm not making it okay. Certainly Lot, this I was drunk is never a good excuse to me. But here we are. This is the story, and this is what happened. So come, let us father drink wine and lie with him, so that we preserve the seed of our father. So they made their father drink wine that night. And the firstborn went in and lay with her father. And he was not aware of it when she lay down or when she arose. So, according to scriptures, he was basically blackout, drunk. He didn't even know. And it came to be on the next day that the firstborn said to the younger, See, I lay with our father last night. Let us make him drink wine tonight as well, and you go in and you lie with him, so that we keep the seed of our father. So they made their father drink wine that night as well. And the younger arose and lay with him. And he was not aware of it when she lay down or when she arose. Thus both daughters of Lot became pregnant by their father. And the firstborn bore a son, and she called his name Moab. He is the father of the Moabites to this day. And the younger also bore a son, and called his name Ben-Ami. He is the father of the children of Ammon to this day. And so there's chapter 19. So that's what happened. Let's not also forget that it wasn't just everybody they knew. Lot was wealthy. He had to separate from Abraham because of all of his possessions, burnt to the ground, all of it. We have a similar response from Noah, if you remember. The world floods. What's he do? He plants a vineyard. One of the very first stories after the flood is Noah being drunk in his tent. Let's not be judgy. We can't imagine what it must be like. All right, chapter 20. And Abraham departed from there to the land of Negev, and he dwelt between Kadesh and Shur, and he stayed in Gerar. And Abraham said concerning Sarah his wife, She is my sister. And Abimelech, sovereign of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. But Elohim came to Abimelech in a dream by night, and said to him, See, you are a dead man because of the woman you have taken, for she is a man's wife. However, Abimelech had not come near her, and he said, Jehovah, would you slay a righteous nation also? Did he not say to me, She is my sister? And she even herself said, He is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and in this innocence of my hands I have done this. And Elohim said to him in a dream, Though I know that you did this in the integrity of your heart, and so I kept you from sinning against me, for this reason I did not let you touch her. Please note, this is an astonishing revelation. God keeps people from sin. The psalmist, David, one of his prayers, and it's a prayer that I pray every single day: keep thy servant from presumptuous sin and let it not rule over me. If you're struggling, it's not just that you appeal to God for forgiveness. Appeal to God for strength against it. He has the ability to keep you from sinning against him, as he did in this moment, keeping Abimelech from sinning against him with Sarah. Verse 7, and now return to the man's wife, for he is a Navi, a prophet. And let him pray for you, and you live. But if you do not return her, know that you shall certainly die, you and all that are yours. So Abimelech rose early in the morning, and he called all of his servants, and he spoke all these words in their hearing, and the men were greatly frightened. And Abimelech called Abraham, and he said, what have you done to us? And what have I sinned against you, that you have brought on me and my reign a great sin? You have done matters to me that should not be done. And Abimelech said to Abraham, what did you have in view that you have done this matter? And Abraham said, only because I said, the reverence of Elohim is not in this place, and they shall kill me for the sake of my wife. And yet she is truly my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. And so it came to be, when Elohim caused me to wander from my father's house, that I said to her, this is your kindness that you should do for me in every place wherever we go. Say of me, he is my brother. Then Abimelech took sheep and cattle and male and female servants and gave them to Abraham, and he returned Sarah his wife. And Abimelech said, see, my land is before you. Dwell wherever it is good in your eyes. Please note, let's not forget, Sarah was just talking about how she's too old to have children 10 minutes ago, and she's still so beautiful that when they go into another kingdom, the first thing that happens is the kingdom takes Sarah from him to bring her in because of her beauty. Just an interesting note. And Sarah said, see, I have given your brother and he said to Sarah, see, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. See, it is you, a covering of eyes before all who are with you and before all the others, and you are cleared before everyone. And Abraham prayed to Elohim, and Elohim healed Abimelech and his wife and his female servants so that they bore children. And Jehovah had closed up all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. Again, how long would it take for a plague of being barren to be noticeable? Abraham was obviously in this area for a while, which means, again, he was separated from Sarah for quite some time, probably years. All right, 2 more chapters. We're going to have to get through them quickly. What we're getting ready to have is this story, and I'm just going to do some commentary up front and then read it to you. We have this coming up. We have the story of this birth, and then we have this sacrifice of Isaac, which is this beautiful picture of the coming Messiah. And it's this beautiful picture of absolute faith, because this is the promised child to Abraham that he's been waiting on his entire life. He's now in his old age, and now they have a son, and he's being told to sacrifice him, to part with the one thing that he loves most. But Abraham, knowing the promises of God, follows through. And then when Isaac asks him, he says a very interesting phrase: God will provide himself a sacrifice, which is this perfect picture of how Messiah came and provided himself as a sacrifice, the lamb without spot or blemish, providing what we could not provide ourselves. And so it's really just a beautiful story, but it also points to that truth. All right, that'll be the end of my commentary for this morning. I'm going to just read chapters 21 and 22 to you, and then we'll wrap it up. And Jehovah visited Sarah as he had said, and Jehovah did for Sarah as he had spoken. Please note, I know I just said no more commentary, but I gotta correct myself. They obviously weren't where Abimelech was for longer than 9 months. That wouldn't make much sense, because God promised beforehand that he would visit upon Sarah the time of life. Which, how long does it take? 9 months, right? So I correct my previous statement. And Jehovah visited Sarah as he had said, and Jehovah did for Sarah as he had spoken. So Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, at the appointed time of which Elohim had spoken to him. And Abraham called the name of his son, who was born to him, whom Sarah bore to him, Yitzchak, that is to say, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son, Yitzchak, when he was 8 days old, and Elohim had commanded him. And Abraham was 100 years old when his son Yitzchak was born to him. And Sarah said, Elohim has made me laugh, and everyone who hears of it laughs with me. And she said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? For I have borne him a son in his old age. And the children grew and was weaned. And Abraham made a great feast on the day that Yitzchak was weaned. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Mitzrayite, whom she had borne to Abraham, mocking. So she said to Abraham, drive out this female servant and her son, for the son of this female servant shall not inherit with my son, with Yitzchak. And the matter was very evil in the eyes of Abraham because of his son. But Elohim said to Abraham, let it not be evil in your eyes because of the boy, and because of your wife, or because of your female servant. Whatever Sarah has said to you, listen to her voice, for Yitzchak is your seed, is called. And the son of the female servant I also make a great nation, because he is your seed. And Abraham rose early in the morning, and he took bread and a skin of water, which he gave to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder, as also the boy he sent her away. And she left and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. And the water in the skin was used up, and she placed the boy under one of the shrubs, and she went and she sat down a bow shot away, for she said, let me not see the death of the boy. And she sat opposite him and lifted up her voice and wept. And Elohim heard the voice of the boy, and the messenger of Elohim called to Hagar from the Shemayim, and he said to her, what is the matter with you, Hagar? Do not fear, for Elohim has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Arise, lift up the boy and hold him with your hand, for I make a great nation of him. And Elohim opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. And she went and she filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. And Elohim was with the boy, and he grew and he dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer. And he dwelt in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Mitzrayim. And it came to be at that time that Abimelech and Pokol, the commander of his army, spoke to Abraham, saying, Elohim is with you in all that you do. And thou swear unto me by Elohim not to be untrue to me, to my offspring, or to my descendants. Do to me according to the kindness that I have done to you, and to the land which you dwelt. And Abraham said, I swear. And Abraham reproved Abimelech because of a well water which the Abimelech's servants had seized. And Abimelech said, I do not know who has done this deed, neither did you inform me, nor did I hear until today. So Abraham took sheep and cattle and gave them to Abimelech, and the two of them made a covenant. And Abraham put 7 ewe lambs of the flock by themselves, and Abimelech asked Abraham, what are these 7 ewe lambs? You have put them by themselves. And he said, take these 7 ewe lambs from my hand, to be my witness that I have dug this well. So he called that place Beersheba, because the two of them swore an oath there. Thus they made a covenant at Beersheba, and Abimelech rose with Picol, the commander of his army, and they returned to the land of the Pelishites. And he planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba, and there called on the name of Jehovah, the everlasting El. And Abraham sojourned in the land of the Pelishites many days. Chapter 22, our last chapter. This should only take a few minutes. And it came to be after these events that Elohim tried Abraham, and he said to Abraham, Abraham, and he said, here I am. He said, "Take your son now, your only son Yitzchak, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I command you." And Abraham rose early in the morning, and he saddled his donkey, and he took 2 of his young men with him, and Yitzchak his son, and he split the wood for a burnt offering, and arose and went to the place which Elohim had commanded him. And on the 3rd day Abraham lifted up his eyes, and he saw the place from a distance. So Abraham said to his young men, "Stay here with the donkey while the boy and I go over there and worship, and come back to you." And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering, and he laid it on Yitzchak his son, and he took the fire in his hand and a knife, and the 2 of them went together. And Yitzchak spoke to Abraham his father, and he said, "My father." And he said, "Here I am, my son." And he said, "See the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" And Abraham said, "My son, Elohim provides for himself the lamb for the burnt offering." And the 2 of them went together, and they came to the place which Elohim had commanded him. And Abraham built an altar there, and placed the wood in order. And he bound Yitzchak his son, and he laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched out his hands, and he took the knife to slay his son. But the messenger of Jehovah called to him from the Shemayim, and said, "Abraham, Abraham." And he said, "Here I am." He said, "Do not lay your hand on the boy, nor touch him, for I now know that you revere Elohim, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." Please note again the picture of the Messiah. Abraham was willing to not withhold his only son. In the same way, the God of the universe did not withhold his only son from us. And Abraham lifted up his eyes, and he looked, and he saw behind him, and a ram caught in a bush by its horns. And Abraham went, and he took the ram, and he offered it up as a burnt offering instead of a son. Again, in place of a son, God provided a sacrifice. And Abraham called to the name of that place Jehovah Vayera. And he said, "To this day on this mountain Jehovah provides." And the messenger of Jehovah called to Abraham a second time from the Shemayim, and he said, "By myself I have sworn, declares Jehovah, because you have done this, and have not withheld your son, your only son, that I shall certainly bless you, and I shall certainly increase your seed as the stars of the Shemayim, and as the sand which is on the seashore, and let your seed possess the gate of their enemies. And in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice." And then Abraham returned to the young men, and they rose up, and they went together to Beersheba, and Abraham dwelt at Beersheba. And it came to be after these events that it was reported to Abraham, saying, "See, Milcah too has borne children to your brother Nahor, Utz the firstborn, and Buz his brother, and Chemiel the father of Aram, and Chesed, and Hazo, and Pildash, and Yadelph, and Bethuel. And Bethuel brought forth Ribkah. These 8 Milcah bore to Nahor, Abraham's brother. And his concubine, whose name was Ruumah, also bore Tebah, and Gaham, and Tahash, and Makkah. That, my friends, is our Torah portion for this week. I pray that you've been blessed by this study this morning. It's one of my favorite portions. Thank you for listening. Just a reminder, this broadcast is 100% listener supported. If you are able and willing, please consider doing so by going to scriptureandprophecy.com. And if not, your prayers are equally as coveted, and I am just so grateful to all of you. And I just pray that this work is definitely making a difference in your walk. Peace and grace be with all of you. And until next time, God bless.